Excellent. All right.
Guest on my podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I know you were on my podcast, and I'm happy to return the favor and give a lot of value to your audience. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time because I find your story very interesting. That's why I thought I wanted to have you on too. But before we dive into that, I have a very international audience. So please tell us where in the world are you located, and also one thing about you that has nothing to do with what we're talking about afterwards, and that may surprise people about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm based out of Houston, Texas, in the United States. And a little bit brief background about me. My education and training was in medical medicine. So, I did the traditional route. I went to Baylor for medical school, one of the top ranked medical schools in the United States. And then trained in orthopedic surgery for residency. And then after that, I realized that I had a deeper calling, deeper passion for more creative entrepreneurship endeavors. So luckily I was able to, before I realized this, I was implementing good financial habits, saving and investing in real estate, investing in passive income investments. So that gave me a lot of financial freedom and a leeway to transition into what I'm doing now. So that's a little bit about me. And I know that you have further questions about my journey. And
Definitely.
and you want the interesting thing about me now or at the end?
Yeah, no. Tell me now. It's just something
Oh,
because it just gives the people before they listen to whatever we're talking about afterwards, it gives them a bit different context about you if you share something,
yeah.
whatever you want to share. Doesn't have to be big, just something.
Yeah. So something, well, something interesting about me is I run marathons. So I love that's kind of like my outlet and kind of keeps me in shape and
Mhm.
forces me to focus on my health and focus on good diet, nutrition, rest, exercise, all of that. So that's a little bit. I have a lot of other interesting.
Mm.
Competed in Olympic Taekwondo with Olympic gold medalist. Just and that was a great experience. Traveled the world, lived almost everywhere except Latin America, and yeah, it's been a great journey.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So running marathons that requires a lot of like endurance and resilience and
Yeah,
all these things. So that's amazing. I love asking this question because it just gives a different perspective, especially if we're talking afterwards a bit about finances and stuff, which scares a lot of people. And
yeah,
if they hear another side of you, I always find that is it's a nice
yeah,
um, entry into the discussion
yeah.
because we want to talk about your you touched on it already, your amazing story. So if you were first a doctor. Most doctors don't end up financially independent, but you were financially independent by 29,
Yeah.
and then I believe by 38 or 39
38.
you
Yeah,
were retired, right?
yeah,
And most doctors, they end up with lots of student loan or whatever, and they're not at all financially independent.
yeah,
So that's very impressive story. So first I want to ask, when did you get the idea or the bug in you to
yeah.
want to become financially free and independent?
Yeah, well, like most people, I started my journey. I listened to the old advice. Kind of, go to good school, study hard, get good grades, get a high-paying job. Work 60 years, and get a pension. The government's gonna save you, and Social Security, and live off your 401k. That's kind of, and your job is gonna be there all the time. So, that was kind of the mantra up to. But I think after 2000 right after the internet came and right after the tech bubble and right after 9/11, I saw the world really start to shift and change. And China was getting onto the global stage. They entered the WTO. So I saw all of this happening all at once while I was in medical school. And so I really realized, the world's changing. I saw the healthcare system, the healthcare crisis 20 years before it actually happened. And I told myself I have to have an exit plan because I don't want to be here when the shit hits the fan. I have to have an exit plan. So
Mhm.
I started my financial freedom journey in 2002. Classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure your audience has read it. If they haven't, need to pick it up. That's kind of
Yeah.
the
I
starting
don't know
point.
who hasn't yet. I mean, hello.
Yeah, read that, and it was perfect timing. Right back then, Bush was cutting the interest rates. There was a real estate boom. Equities were going up, so it was almost like a 5-6 year period where I was able to amass a significant amount of liquid net worth. Banks were extremely easy on their lending standards, and luckily, I was safe because the Houston real estate was really cheap. So, for example, a 2-bed, 2-bath condo, 1,500 square feet that could rent out for around $2,000 a month, you could purchase for $50,000. And so it's really like, I mean, you were actually wasting money renting than buying. So no brainer. I did house hacking. I did the BRR method. And so that, by that time I was still in medical school. I had financial independence, and I was financially free. But then, there's this whole collision between new age ideas and old age ideas. So my dean of my medical school, upon graduation, he asked me what I want to do for my career. And I was like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start a company, and, I want to change the world. And he's like, set that aside, go, go into residency, get your board certification, practice. And once you're done practicing, then you can, if you feel like you want to start a company, do that. If I had followed that advice, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, but I took it, I took that advice, and I chose the highest paying specialty. I wasn't really passionate about any of them. I just looked at the income levels. So I chose orthopedic surgery because that was one of the highest paying specialties. I got in, and I realized when I moved from Houston to New Jersey, where my residency was, day one, I realized I had made a horrible choice. I made the wrong choice. I was only looking at income. I was not, in my intuition, my gut told me I'd made the wrong choice. It's almost like you marry the wrong person, or, you kind of, you know this feeling, right? So, yeah. So I toughed it out for 2 years. I lied to myself a lot. I was like, oh, you spend so much money, you spend so much time, you sacrifice so much, you have to keep going. And it really hit a breaking point in 2008, because then I saw what was really happening. I saw the corporate greed and all the fraud, and kind of like the government, bailing out these massive corporations for basically speculation. And we, the taxpayers, had to pay for that. So that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I did not want to be a part of that. As a physician, I was working for these high paid CEOs that were pretty much doing nothing except playing, kind of goofing around. So, September 2008 was the best thing that happened. So I turned in my keys, badge, and pager, and I set out to invest in undervalued real estate throughout Houston. So I already had that skill set, and all I needed to do was do it full time. So over an 8-year period, became a multimillionaire, got my financial freedom. But then there was this need for other doctors, because other doctors were coming to me saying, how did you do it? Can you help me? I'm suffering from burnout. I'm suffering from anxiety, depression, substance abuse. I hate my career, but I have nowhere to turn. I have all this debt. I'm broke, all this stuff. And I was like, well, I have to figure out a way to help. So I started my speaking. I've written 4 books. I've got a growing podcast, YouTube channel. And after COVID, when everybody saw what was happening, my brand exploded. So it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah. It is an amazing journey, and to watch what you went through. You just basically answered almost all my questions. It's really, I will dig deeper in a few of them, because I'm thinking too, is like the way you present yourself and how driven you are. A really good doctor went like, how do you say that? We miss out on a really good orthopedic doctor. And I just had to have surgery in May, and I know how important it is that the right person is messing with your body, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so one of my questions was, you must have not been happy with being a doctor, that you transitioned into entrepreneurship. So you answered that. But you also answered another question I wanted to ask you. And because you say on your website, what if the formula for true happiness first came with self-revolution and financial freedom? So I wanted to ask you, does money and financial freedom make you happy? But I think it's the right financial freedom, I would think too, right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk about that a bit, because you had a good paying job, but that was not what you wanted. And you didn't listen to your gut feelings. Like I think we all do once in our life,
Yeah.
majorly, like we do it in small things sometimes where we notice, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then it's not a big consequence, but we
Yeah.
all did it once when it was like, oh my God, we shouldn't have done that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think so this concept of finances and money is really messed up, especially here in the United States. But I think part of it is part of it's from the media because we equate money, we basically equate income with your self-worth and your status and what it
mhm.
can buy. So, we tout these these billionaire CEOs because they have mansions and yachts and fancy cars and all of this, but really it's what money can do for you. It's like, of course you want to live a abundant lifestyle, but the concept of money is tied to consumption, so it's just basically consumption. But
Yeah.
really what it is it's a medium that allows you to exchange value. So if you need to pay for gas or grocery, or you need to get surgery, or you want to help somebody, money is good for that. But here we equate income and status and with consumption, personal consumption. So that's kind of one of the fallacies with finances and financial freedom. And this concept is not taught in schools. Either your parents have to teach it or hand it down, or you have to have mentors, or you have to, in my case, you have to go to books and podcasts and things, kind of get the insights and kind of put it together, which is really a travesty because money really is kind of, if you, like I said, money can't solve all your problems, but it can solve your money problems, which gives you more options and can allow you that freedom to focus on your emotional health or your physical health or your relationships. And what's interesting is just hanging out with a lot of high net worth and high income individuals. More money, it actually makes you more miserable because you have to worry about taxes. You have to worry about what are you going to do when you die? Is the government going to come in? All these things. It
Yeah,
adds more stress.
or your family is gonna have a fight afterwards over your money, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just like somebody's gonna sue you just to get a settlement out of you, all these things. So
Yeah.
um but yeah.
Yeah, but so I we talked with I talked with other guests on this podcast before about what a shame it is that we're actually like we're taught all kinds of BS in school, but
Yeah,
not what actually helps us in real life,
yeah,
and finances is one of them. And what is also sad is like people, like you just mentioned, they go for consumption, then they fill up their houses because they think that makes them happy, and it doesn't make them happy. And the interesting part is too is that other than some gurus on Instagram and possibly Facebook that show off their jets and whatever, most people that have a lot of money don't have clutter, or they don't have their house full of stuff they don't need, right? So
yeah,
it's actually not the consumption that makes you happy, or that what you can buy with the money,
yeah,
but it's that. So for me, freedom is a high standard and a high value. So for me, it's like if the money I'm having or making can't give me time freedom, then it's not so important, right? And most people give up their money for physical clutter
yeah,
instead of
yeah,
for time freedom.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
yeah, and it's quite interesting because when you try to talk to, like, for example, a lot of my like doctor friends, or where their families spend, just basically waste a lot of waste, and I don't say anything, but I can see
Mm-hmm.
it. And when you
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about this idea of time freedom or location freedom, it basically triggers them because like I said, money is a very emotional subject, because
Mm-hmm.
we all have, is so important in our lives, and basically it's our relationship with these ideals. So when you think about like kind of severing the relationship between time and money, a lot of people can't fathom that because they're so used to working for
Yeah.
money and trading,
Yeah.
this job. So it's quite interesting to see like people, I know who, based on their reaction, I can kind of tell how their relationship with money is. So
Yeah, well, it's almost like they're brainwashed, and not to. It's not their fault, right? Because like you just said, or we just said, the whole system, the whole school system, the whole society is aimed towards that we consume, and we go to work. And I
yeah,
mean, the school system. I always heard that the school system was set up to create factory workers, right? Not entrepreneurs.
yeah,
You got even bad advice from your dean saying you shouldn't become an entrepreneur.
yeah.
You should just.
Yeah,
Although, like I said, I mean, we would need doctors. I mean, where I am here in Canada, we have for sure not enough doctors. It's a huge shortage. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Um, you have to wait forever to get to a specialist.
Hmm.
It's sad. It's sad.
Hmm.
But we're also burning out the ones that we do have, because I mean, one thing I never could understand is when somebody went and had to go to residency, and you probably know that better than me, but they have to work 80 or 90 hours a week. I
Yeah.
mean, what kind of stupid system is that we have overtired, exhausted, burned out doctors
Yeah.
messing with our body, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's quite a shame because I actually really enjoyed medical school. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed, hanging with my classmates and, learning the material. I love my rotations. And then get into residency, and it's totally not what I signed up for. I
Mhm.
didn't sign up to, fill out paperwork and,
Yeah.
do all these like I signed up to learn how to be a doctor, and that's not what is like all this nonsense. But and
Mhm.
like luckily I found out earlier. A lot of my classmates, they finished, and then their first job, and they're like, WTF, this is not what I signed up for, and they
Yeah.
struggle for the
Yeah.
rest of their. So like I said, there's a dichotomy between the healthcare system and healthcare training. So
Yeah.
and I, for a lot of people that reach out to me for career advice, I tell them, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, because kind of TV glamorizes it, and it's like society
Mhm.
glamorizes it, but there's a lot of things you need to know before you get into it. Make sure this is what you really
Yeah.
want to do. So
Yeah, the bureaucracy compared to actually really helping people and spending your time that you're working helping people, right? I could
yeah,
imagine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and then I don't know the exact timeline, but when you became financially independent and retired, you went and traveled for a whole year, right? That's what
Yeah.
I read. So, I have two questions about that. So, that's of course the big dream of everybody. Oh, when I can travel. So, what did you learn about yourself when you traveled? Like all of a sudden not having to work and you could just travel for a whole year. What did you learn about yourself?
Oh man, I think I learned more in that year than so one thing is, what was really interesting is the first 2 months were just total bliss. Like it was fantastic. And then after that 2 months, it got boring. And what I realized from that was we have to have a purpose. We have to have like a goal, a challenge,
Mhm.
just kind of a bigger purpose to strive for. Because these periods of respite are great, but ultimately we're here to stretch and grow and challenge ourselves. So that was the first thing, and so that's what motivated me to come back. And um I learned what I wanted. What I really am grateful for was, during that time, was I met a lot of digital nomads that were making six figures online, either social media influencers, or like YouTubers, bloggers. They had their
Mhm.
e-commerce, all of these different, it was quite really fascinating to just meet them, and just to see in person people that were actually making more more than doctors, and also having great health and being in great shape and great relationships, and just kind of having that freedom. So that was really motivating and inspiring to me. So that's why I started writing books and speaking, and started thinking bigger, thinking bigger in terms of how do I want to position myself as an influencer, and how do I want to position myself on the thought leadership stage. So kind of like, you have medicine, which is okay. I mean, you can practice, there's only so much you can do, but if you're a thought leader or an influencer, you can influence culture and the way things are presented in so many different ways, and you can impact, thousands, millions of people. So that's kind of what I learned.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then did you learn also something, like you were already financially independent, but when you went to these different countries, did you learn surprising things, let's say like that, surprising things about how to be financially independent in different countries? Because I just know, like, I'm coming from Switzerland originally. We're a country of renters, which I just saw that some American journalist was very surprised to learn that in a rich country like Switzerland, most people are renters.
Uh-huh.
It's just different. So that's kind of what got me to the idea that maybe you learned something about financial freedom in other countries too on your trip.
Yeah, well, one thing that was really interesting was I traveled to Latin America, and I think Latin America right now is a fantastic opportunity. Just, so much, with so much financial innovation. But one thing I realized is that, as much as we complain about our systems in the West, we have it pretty good. Like other countries, they have bigger problems, like a lot of people, they put their savings in the bank and it's gone. So one thing is just financial oppression was rampant, and just financial inclusion and financial equity was not the same. So the rich always got richer, they had access to all the resources, and they kind of made the poor poorer. So that was one thing. And one thing that really inspired me about the West is that we have freedom, we have economic empowerments, meaning that if I don't like something, or if I don't like my job or boss, I can leave anytime. I can go out, create my own income. I'm not going to be, I may suffer for a little bit, but I'm not going to be like, homeless or poor or destitute. I have economic freedom, right? So that's one thing. The other, so basically, like financial inclusion, financial equity, economic freedoms, all of these things really, and just the way the currencies, like I learned a lot about like the central banks and how they functioned, and how they were able to create debt and devalue the currencies, and how this was affecting populations, with food and asset price bubbles, all these things. So that's the other thing, is just kind of this. I also learned that one thing is people outside of the West are much happier. So, and I wanted to know why. So especially in Europe, for example, Denmark, why are they like they have a level of happiness that it's not tied to money, it's tied to this state of being. I think it's called hygge, or I'm not sure if I pronounced
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
Scandinavian, yeah.
Yeah, and they're incredibly grateful, they're appreciative, and part of that is part of that kind of the culture, and the thing is, in the West, it's kind of it's non-homogeneous, so you have a lot of different, but kind of Europe and Asia, it's kind of homogeneous, so it's a little bit easier to implement these things. But they like these kind of tenets of just gratitude and being thankful, and their governments are fiscally responsible. So like, for example, healthcare, education, transportation, all these are fundamental to their citizens. But here it's kind of like, if you have more money, you have more access to these things. So I saw that as well. So but kind of like how to create a state of happiness independent of status or money and all of that. So
yeah. The scary thing is, I feel like, coming from Switzerland, and I don't want to speak for whole Europe, but I'm thinking like we get a little bit that two class, especially in the medical as well, that is present here in North America, which is a little scary, because it was never that way in Switzerland or in Europe.
Yes.
So, but we always look at towards the US. So when I was in corporate, working in corporate, for example, I was working for an American corporation, and it was just crazy what work hours we had and what we had to do compared to if I would have worked for a Swiss company, which they are just as successful, right? But they have a different culture.
Yeah.
So that's basically what you're also hinting at, that it's even though in Europe, especially Germany, Austria, Switzerland are very like also from history, we're working hard and everything, but it's still different than the
Yeah.
crazy hustle culture
Yeah.
here in North America, I find.
Yeah. I feel like you know, the people in Asia and Europe, they work hard and they understand that that hard work in the end will produce something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, I know Canada has a better system, but like in the United States, you have to basically hoard a lot of resources to ensure your future, because if you're gonna be dependent on like Medicare or Social Security, that's not gonna cut it. That's like bare
Mm-hmm.
minimum. And then like a lot of your time and your effort and your income goes to paying for these taxes, and you really
Yeah.
don't get much for your taxes. So one thing I realized is that high tax countries like Europe, like, but they do enjoy, like, education is not a fear here. It is a fear, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's very expensive and it's very divisive. Like only rich
Yeah.
people can get into the best colleges. And so healthcare as well. So it's here healthcare is extremely expensive, and it's very inefficient, and it's like people are not health. It's kind of like sick care as opposed to like preventive care. So
Yeah, well, I think that's I think globally a little bit of a problem in my opinion, but
yeah.
you probably know more about that. But yeah, totally. And I think this is often too where we compare the apples with the pears or the apples with the oranges. When, like, I hear this constantly, oh, Switzerland, such an expensive country, blah blah blah. But in the end, when you look at what the income level is and what the expense level is for average family, I think in Switzerland you're better off than here,
Yeah.
even though we have the reputation to be such an expensive country. I mean, I got
Yeah.
startled when I moved to Canada to see how expensive groceries are, for example, compared to Switzerland. And of course, if you look at the bread here, it might be more expensive in Switzerland than in Canada, but the salaries are higher too. So it's like
Yeah.
you have to compare the right things with the right things. And
Yeah.
this is crazy here in North America. Canada might not be as bad as the US, but it's uh, yeah. I don't want to bash Canada, but it's yeah, the higher taxes you pay, but you make sure that your government actually is accountable for what you're paying, then you
Yeah.
have a better life in the end than if you pay less and you're on
Yeah.
your own, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so you also say that you might not know it yet, but all the tools you need to achieve your goals, and I assume you mean the financial goals too, are within you. So what is one thing that you suggest people do so they wake up and think, okay, I need to look after myself. I can't just be sleepwalking continuously. So what would you suggest where they start? Like reading, if you haven't done so yet, The Rich Dad Poor Dad for sure, but it's almost an old book. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they definitely start reading. There's now is not, like 20 years ago was the age of information. Now we're in the age of transformation. So we have all this information, we have all this knowledge, we got social media, and so you have to start putting it together. But def definitely start by just a daily habit of reading, 30 minutes, an hour. I usually made it a goal to read one personal development book and one business book a month. And now with like audiobooks, I can read a lot.
mhm.
And so then also there's so much knowledge, so much information. Reach out to people, ask them questions. There's so many groups, there's communities, there's so much courses as well. All it can be free or paid. Kind of hire, if you have the money, you can hire a coach to someone or someone to help you, guide you along the way. All of these things can help you. But it takes one small step. So you have to it's kind of like you take step, and then basically you have to understand that I had a great conversation with another guest, and it was talking about just letting go and kind of stepping into the unknown. Like basically, you have to have, like, in periods of transition, you have to just basically take baby steps and take the step into the unknown and see what unfolds, and you have to be open to what comes to you. And you have to, if you let go of your preconceived notions, you let go of all that emotional baggage that creates more mental emotional space for the universe to send you what it's trying to give to you, or what you're trying to manifest. So it's kind of like activating this law of attraction. There's a great book called that I just finished reading. It's called Positive Intelligence, and he's talking about just kind of like the sage mind, and then kind of the saboteurs. But it kind of reminds me of just you have to let go. You just have to let go of all preconceived notions. It's like the best analogy is skydiving. So you just basically you have someone behind you, and you just leap out. You've got a parachute, so you know you're going to be fine 95% of the time. So it's kind of like that. Entrepreneurship is like that. You just have to take a leap. You have to take a bet on yourself, and just kind of be open to what it is, and always be taking action. The more action you take, that sends the universe the message of intention, and that intention comes back to you. So it can be in form of karma, dharma, all of these things. But that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the action, because I think maybe a lot of people are listening because, like you said, there's so much information out there. They may be listening but not taking any action, and just staying in their day-to-day, whatever they do anyways, right? So we do need to take action, and I think without taking action, and you mentioned also you read self-development books. Do you feel like if somebody wants to become financially free or freer, let's say like that, do they need to go on a self-development and self-discovery journey?
Well, I mean, it definitely helps, like, because personal development, you heal your emotional past, you heal your traumas, you kind of address those, and it allows you to grow. And that's what entrepreneurship is. It's just this continually evolutionary process. Same thing with financial literacy, financial freedom. Your financial health also evolves too. So the more you invest in yourself personally, so for example, you may not realize it, but maybe going to bed earlier, getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep, waking up earlier, exercising, drinking more water, eating more fruits and vegetables, that can actually have a significant impact on your financial life. It may make you to save more, it may make you to invest more. So you never know what these small little habits can compound into different areas. So personal development, I think a great book the number one book for personal development for me was Think and Grow Rich, because it's got personal development and finances together. So it's kind of combined. And Jim Rohn is fantastic. Brian Tracy. I read a lot of Tony Robbins, Using Your Emotions as Power, as Motivation. He's very powerful. You can get so much just from reading his books. And the more you invest in yourself, it helps your relationships, it'll help your business, it'll help your finances, it'll help your career, a lot of different things. So
yeah, well, I totally agree. I read self-development since my teenage years. And back then it was ridiculed, right? So I was like, oh, you want to get better. And these days, I think we're realizing what a difference it makes. So where can people find you if they're now intrigued? They want to. You have such a successful podcast. You just said you wrote 4 books, I believe 4 it is, or are you
4.
writing on a 5th one maybe? And the other thing I wanted to ask: so if I send people your way, is it mostly physicians that you're helping, or I mean, the podcast, in my opinion, anybody can get value from, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my audience has broadened. So like the core audience is physicians, but it's also broadened. So with YouTube and with the podcast, more like dentists and lawyers and accountants, nurses, nurse practitioners, all these, they're starting to listen, and they're starting to reach out to me as well. So you can find me you can either go to YouTube and subscribe to the Financial Freedom Podcast. It'll show me, or you can go to the podcast itself, Financial Freedom Podcast. Email me, Chris at Dr. Chris Liu, MD, PhD, and that'll get you onto the emailing list. And, we've got a blog, a newsletter. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. So I'm always happy to connect and help others.
No preferred social media platform. They can contact you anywhere, right? I will put all the links for sure into the show notes so they can find you. And that's what my impression was too. That's why I also wanted to have you on, because my audience is not necessarily only physicians, but I felt like my audience is mostly entrepreneurs or self-employed people, so they can all get value from your story. And especially since you were a physician, you were in medicine, that's a highly sought after profession, but you transitioned out of it, and for all the reasons why. So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, did you want to share, did I not ask something? Is there anything you feel like needs to be added to make this whole conversation? Or we want to leave my audience with some other secret tip or whatever you want to close with?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think one thing you alluded to was, so I went into medicine, and but a lot of people were actually surprised that I had, in September 2008, a lot of people were calling me crazy that I had, transitioned out. They said I was throwing away my career, but realized, so that one thing I want to leave them with is like really understand like why you're doing something, because kind of like I'll share a little bit, like a little bit of my emotionally traumatic past is, I kind of went into medicine to, please my parents and kind of please society and kind of fill all these check boxes. I thought it was a great income that would make me happy. And what I really wanted was just freedom and quality of life. So freedom and quality of life you can get from anywhere. You don't have to be a doctor to do that. You can you can do a lot of different things. So kind of realize your end goal and how you're going to get there, and kind of understand your motivations for doing things, kind of have keen awareness of what that. And next thing is, don't listen to the naysayers, because the naysayers, like I look back on the naysayers, they haven't done anything. So always the people that your mentors, you look to them, and the reason why they're mentors is because they have done what you want to do. The naysayers and the haters are there because they haven't done what you want to do, and that's why they try to hold you back. So and like I said, it used to really bother me with the haters, but now after I see like they haven't gone anywhere, it's like, okay, now I understand. So that's what I want to leave the audience with.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. And I think we all needed to hear that again, because I'm sure we all have naysayers in our life still. And then sometimes it bothers us, sometimes less, but it's good to hear. Thank you so much for your time, Chris, for coming on and sharing your story. Very amazing, very impressive. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.